Hey, everybody, welcome to Moment of Clarity. I'm Lee Camp, one of the most censored comedians, type journalist type people in the world. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining me. I got a lot of stories for you. I know I've covered the Twitter files in multiple regards. I've also covered some of the attacks on Matt Taibbi, but there's an excellent new article from Chris Hedges revealing more of the attacks on Matt Taibbi and those who dare report the absolutely real Twitter files, much as we saw the attacks on Julian Assange and those who reported on the absolutely real files that came out in WikiLeaks. So I'm going to get into some of that in a moment. Please take a second to hit subscribe, hit thumbs up. All that stuff hurts. Hurts. All that stuff helps. I don't know where my brain is at. What was that Freudian slip? Doing this hurts. It hurts me. All that stuff helps and helps me fight the algorithm. So please do that. Please leave a comment, even if you have nothing to say. All that stuff is good, even though I am woefully suppressed. I love that. I mean, I don't know. You guys may not give a shit about the day to day of being shadow banned and what it's like, but I love that. Like, the more effort, the more work I put into things, the more you'll see the numbers start to go up and then they just back down again. Because basically it's like probably I'm getting more and more hits, but they want to suppress the more hits I'm getting. So then some sort of new algorithmic change is added or made or whatever. So it's like the more effort I put in, actually, the worse my numbers get. Which maybe that's a tip. Just stop trying. Just stop trying. Just put out garbage. It's going to get the same number of views. But that's not true on Rumble. So join me at rumble.com/Lee Camp as well. All right, but let's get into this. And for those of you at locals, leecamp.net, I will be answering some of your questions towards the end of this live stream. Tell me your comments. I will be reading them. So please, if you're there, feel free to leave a comment that I will try and get to towards the end of this live stream. But all right, let's talk about what's in this article from Chris Hedges on December 24th. And I know most of you have kept up with the Twitter files. Some of you maybe not. So I'll give a little bit of background. But October 24th, 2022, this past October, day before Christmas, Matt Taibbi was in a room at a hotel in San Francisco, pouring through reports sent to Twitter from an entity called the Foreign Influence Task Force. Now, this is something you and I probably had never heard of. The FITF is an FBI-led interagency task force that forwards moderation requests. What a friendly way of saying censorship. From numerous government agencies, including Homeland Security, the CIA, the Pentagon, the State Department, and a partridge in a pear tree, all to social media outlets. Taibbi was given access to the internal traffic by Twitter's new owner, Elon Musk. It revealed how the FBI and other government agencies routinely suppressed news and commentary. He published a Twitter thread that night, Christmas Eve, with the headline "Twitter and other government agencies." Now, I've gone through many of his Twitter threads that revealed these type of things, so I'm not going to go through those details. Instead, what this segment that I'm doing now is about the actual attacks. And I'll show some of the attacks during the congressional testimony in a moment. But some of the attacks that have gone on against the journalist, Matt Taibbi, who dare reveal the truth. None of these documents from internal Twitter, none of them have been questioned. Oh, they were fake. No one's claiming that. They're all true. And they show how Twitter has acted in many ways as an arm of our government. And some of that may have changed under Musk, but Musk was just awarded a multi-million-dollar contract with the Pentagon. He has long held connections to the CIA. So I don't know that a lot of it is changing under Musk. Some of it maybe. I know I'm still largely shadow banned over on Twitter. So it's, Randy Credico, a fellow comedian, also just banned on Twitter. So I don't know really how much has changed, but that's not really the point. The content that was suppressed included right-wing and left-wing reports critical of the dominant narrative advanced by the Democratic Party and the old establishment wing of the Republican Party, which has been folded into the Democratic Party. Threads from the Yellow Vest movement, activists from the Occupy movement, Global Revolution Live, which, if you don't know about them, they were pivotal in many of the revolutions and uprising around that time of Occupy. They were important also with Occupy. Negative stories about Joe Biden reporting on the Ukrainian energy company Burisma that paid Hunter Biden about $1 million a year while his father was vice president. Positive stories about Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro were suppressed. Reports about Ukrainian human rights abuses and details of the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop were all of the just a tiny portion of the plethora of accounts that were flagged and disappeared. Now, Chris Hedges then says something that also identically holds true for me. He says, I was a victim of this censorship. The 6-year archive of my show On Contact, broadcast on RT America, was erased from YouTube, although not one show was about Russia and none violated YouTube's content guidelines. All of my shows erased as well. Most of you know that. And my entire channel banned around the world. But so let's get back to Taibbi. So Taibbi goes in front of Congress and he tells them basically what was in the Twitter file. He tries to tell them what was in the Twitter files. But all the Democrats, with to every single one, not a single Democrat stood up and defended Taibbi's right to publish true journalism. All of them just went after him in a variety of ways, some of which I'm going to get to in a moment. But Taibbi said, my understanding is that the FITF has a staff of at least 80. That's the FBI Interagency Task Force. It consists primarily of the FBI, but it also includes people from the Department of Homeland Security, the Office of Director of National Intelligence. Requests that came from the states went through DHS, Department of Homeland Security. Requests that came from the federal government went through the FBI. They went through a program called Teleporter. That's how we got those documents. So all of this should horrify you, right? The idea that our government tells Twitter what is allowable in the public sphere, all of that should make veins pop out in your neck the way they do on me. It should absolutely infuriate you. But then on top of just that existing, this establishment, this system, the loose conglomeration of ghouls and serpents that represents our government it's not just that they did that, it's that they now need to try and destroy the life of the journalist or journalists that reveal this type of thing. So in March, Taibbi and Michael Shellenberger were called to testify before the Select Subcommittee on Weaponization of the Federal Government. While Taibbi was testifying on March 9th, an IRS agent visited his house in New Jersey. So as Taibbi is testifying in front of Congress, the government is sending IRS agents to his house to scare him, to silence him, now ostensibly to find something wrong that he's done in his taxes. But even if that's all they do, even if the sole goal was to find flaws in Taibbi's taxes, why do that on the day he's testifying? Why do that at all at the time that he's revealing that Twitter and other social media platforms are an arm of our government? Of course, it's politically based. I mean, anyone who could come to any other conclusion that clearly the IRS is being used as a weapon, as a tool by the ruling elite. I don't know that that's exclusively the Biden administration. It could go far beyond the Biden administration into deep state actors, but whatever, it's being used as a tool, as a weapon by our government to harm people, to threaten people, to scare people. Taibbi discovered that the IRS opened a case against him on the day he first published on Christmas Eve, 2022. So he publishes his report, IRS opens a file. He goes to testify in front of Congress, they arrive at his house. Those are the two key dates in the IRS investigation into him. He found that out from a letter by House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan, a letter that Jim Jordan sent to, and Jim Jordan is a right wing, fucking prick. But in this regard, he's correct. In this regard, he's doing the right thing, which is to find out why the IRS is being used as a weapon against a journalist. So whether you like Jim Jordan or not is not really the point. So he sent a letter to IRS Commissioner Daniel Werfel inquiring about Taibbi's case. It was a Saturday. It was Christmas Eve. Taibbi did not owe taxes. The case was 4 years old. It was from 2018. All this suggests that the IRS case was clearly politically motivated. So then they begin the character assassination against Taibbi. And I want to play for you. We'll watch together some of this testimony that was done by our old favorite, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Isn't it nice to see her pop back up again doing this kind of garbage? Debbie Wasserman Schultz goes out of her way to try and harm the legitimacy of Taibbi, as did many of them. But Schultz is perhaps one of the most hilarious, watching her do it as one of the most corrupt officials that we have in government. I mean, after we saw what she did with the helping to rig the primaries against Bernie Sanders, etc. But anyway, let's watch some of this.
A great point. I now recognize the gentlelady from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Taibbi, I want to ask about journalistic ethics and information sources. The Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics asserts that journalists should avoid political activities that can compromise integrity or credibility. Being a Republican witness today certainly casts a cloud over your objectivity.
So apparently, according to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, no one is allowed to be a witness in front of testimony and call themselves a journalist. No one. Because if you're testifying for the Democrats, then you're on the Democrats side testifying because the Republicans called him. Then apparently that taints you. So according to her worldview, what she would view as legit or virtuous is no one ever going to testify in front of Congress and calling themselves a journalist. Now, other people could go testify, but they would have to admit that they are also corrupted because they've been called to testify. Like, that's legit what she just said. You have been called by Republicans to testify. That taints you as a journalist and your ethics. Therefore, zero witnesses ever brought in front of Congress can be considered legit. So by her worldview, Congress would just never learn anything from witnesses. Sounds great, doesn't it? Sounds wonderful. I mean, how sick is that?
But a deeper concern that I have relates to the ethics of how journalists receive and present certain information. Journalists should avoid accepting spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion. Would you agree with that?
An easily disputed foregone conclusion. How exactly has this one been disputed? These emails and other forms of correspondence that have been revealed with the Twitter files are not disputed. They're absolutely legit. And he wasn't given spoon-fed data. He was given all of the thousands of pages of interaction connected to this. What were the initials again? IFTTITTI, the FITF. So Elon Musk and Twitter gave him thousands of documents connected to that interagency bureau that were sent to Twitter to suppress things. That's not cherry picking data. That's giving you all of the data. That's in many ways, that's the opposite of cherry picking data. Yeah, maybe he did. Maybe Elon Musk didn't send Matt Taibbi 10 million other emails in which Twitter was emailing each other internally about, man, I just farted at my desk and I think I heard a window crack on the other side of the office. Maybe he didn't send them every email Twitter ever sent. But if he'd done that, that would actually be trying to bury any ability to come up with what actually went on. That's done by the government, where they'll just, when they have to reveal something they don't want to reveal, they'll reveal it along with 100 million other documents, and they'll just dump 100 million documents on some journalist's desk and be like, have fun, because they know the odds of that journalist being able to get to what they're actually looking for is slim to none. Now we're getting to the point with AI, et cetera, that they probably could go through 100 million documents, but it's drowning them in paperwork. So actually what she's saying is the corrupt thing is actually the opposite of the corrupt thing. Like, Elon Musk just gave all of the correspondence connected to the FBI corresponding with Twitter to Matt Taibbi and others. And it absolutely revealed what I consider corruption, but what many in government would say, oh, that's the way social media should work. It should be an arm of government. Now, I think that is more closely resembles a fascist state, if all of the means of communication are run and controlled and dictated by the government. Whereas apparently people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz view that as the way things should work. Nobody should be able to speak unless it's been approved by yours truly, by the primary rigor in chief.
I think it depends.
Really? You wouldn't agree that
So she asked this ridiculously slanted question that you just heard about. You cherry pick data, and she asked him if he agreed, and he said it depends because of all the things I just said. But
a journalist should avoid spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion?
Congresswoman, I've done probably a dozen stories involving whistleblowers. Every reported story that I've ever done across 3 decades involves sources who have motives. Every time you do a story, you're making a balancing test between the public interest.
Reclaiming my time. Thank you.
right. So what she did, what Debbie Wasserman Schultz did, is she actually read a cherry-picked quote that she's ignoring the second half of. If you heard her quote, it was actually from the journalistic ethics, whatever. It was actually, one should avoid cherry-picked data that is easily disputed, was the second half of the sentence. That reveals a story that's easily disputed. So that's the full statement, right? She read it. That's the full statement. Now she's ignoring the second half of the statement because what Taibbi has revealed is not easily disputed. In fact, it hasn't been disputed at all, with the exception. MSNBC did a hit piece on him where they claimed that because he got one acronym wrong, everything he said was incorrect, which is just pathetic. And it just shows what courtesans the MSNBC are, like fucking little fawning toadies of the deep state. But anyway, so she ignores that, and then Taibbi says another very important thing, which is every story from a whistleblower, every story he's done from a source that is trying to get the truth out about something, yeah, they have a bias. They have a bias towards the truth that they're trying to reveal. And that, like, this idea of unbiased is laughable. It doesn't exist. Every media outlet you've ever heard has a bias, even the ones who claim they're unbiased, because they're all deciding what news to give you. Sometimes they're giving you straight on propaganda, but you can actually be propaganda without giving propaganda. You just avoid the stories you don't want people to hear about. So you could speak all of the truth, just leave out the stories that you don't want people to know. That's still cherry picking information. So she just, it's pathetic and it's sad, and she's a pathetic sack of shit. But
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I ask you this because before you became Elon Musk's hand-picked journalist, and pardon the oxymoron, you stated this.
I don't even know what that means. I guess she means oxymoron in that you're a journalist and she's mocking him for being a journalist. But of course he's a journalist. He's far more of a journalist than she is a leader. Tell you that much. Anyway.
On Joe Rogan's podcast about being spoon-fed information, and I quote, "I think that's true of any kind of journalism," and you'll see it behind me here. "I think that's true of any kind of journalism. Once you start getting handed things, then you've lost. They have you at that point, and you got to get out of that habit. You just can't cross that line." Do you still believe what you told Mr. Rogan? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Good.
So the reason he's smirking is because I assume what he was talking about in the Joe Rogan episode is that he was probably talking about government sources. And once the mainstream media like New York Times, Washington Post, etc., have these government sources that just give them all their information and they just go and repeat it word for word, then you've lost. You're not adversarial to the government anymore. You're not adversarial to the CIA. If the CIA calls you up and says, hey, we have something here. The thing we said is absolutely true. And then the reporter gets on and goes, thing CIA said is absolutely true. Source told me so. So you're just a stenographer for the CIA or the State Department or whoever. I'm pretty certain that's what Matt Taibbi was referring to, is once they just start giving you things and you're reliant on them for your career, then you've lost. Now, the reason this Twitter files is slightly different, although, someone can ask Matt Taibbi if he views it as different. I think the reason he's smirking there is that he does. The reason it's different is because, as we all know, they gave him thousands, tens of thousands of documents. They basically gave him and others the entire internal communications related to the government censorship of Twitter. So that's not cherry picking. It's not like Elon Musk went through these tens of thousands of emails and said, I want Matt Taibbi to know this, but I don't want him to know that. They just dumped the information onto Taibbi and some others. So again, she's trying to mislead you.
Now, you crossed that line with the Twitter files.
No.
Elon Musk, it's my time. Please do not interrupt me.
So I don't know if you could hear that. She said, you crossed that line with the Twitter files. And he said no, because he was probably going to say close to what I just said, but she won't let him speak. So she's in my time. I just accused you of something. You don't get to respond.
Elon Musk spoon-fed you his cherry-picked information, which you must have suspected.
She just keeps repeating spoon-fed cherry pick, spoon-fed cherry pick, spoon-fed cherry pick, like she's some kind of fucking cereal commercial or some shit. She's a Sun-Kissed commercial. Spoon-fed cherry pick, spoon-fed cherry picked. But in fact, any whistleblower who's getting information from anywhere, like WikiLeaks, right? WikiLeaks was taking things. Now, they didn't know their sources. WikiLeaks didn't, unless their source chose to contact them, which is what happened in some scenarios. But in general, the whole point of WikiLeaks was that it would, when you submitted to WikiLeaks, it would mix up the data with all other kinds of data, just tens of thousands of data points coming in. And so when it would arrive in WikiLeaks inbox internally, they didn't know where it had come from. They then had to verify that it was real. But that's spoon-fed, right, from whoever leaked it, even if they don't know the source. Someone leaked it. That's spoon-fed. And cherry-picked, the person did not leak everything that's ever existed. So, these terms are just fucking bullshit designed to be propaganda against that type. Spoon-fed, cherry-picked. It's like, yeah, what, you wanted Elon Musk to give you every document that's ever existed? Every internal Twitter email. Hey, man, my ass is really itchy today, and I don't know why. Get back to me on that. Every email, Twitter. Hey, guys, question. I don't know. Do we censor the word clit wiggle? Because a guy has his handle on here is clit wiggle, and I don't know. I'm unclear as to where we stand on that kind of censorship. Of course, he's not going to give them every document that's ever existed. Spoon-fed, cherry-picked.
Promotes a slanted viewpoint, or at the very least, generates another right-wing conspiracy theory. You violated.
Generates a right-wing conspiracy theory. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy with accurate proof that we've all seen, that no one has claimed that it's not real. Again, very similar to WikiLeaks, very similar to Assange. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz, much like the primary evidence that she and others rigged in 2016, and then to a different degree in 2020, they can't actually answer the evidence. They can't face the evidence. They can't address the evidence. So they just go after the idea that the evidence is evidence at all, and the idea that Matt Taibbi should exist as a human being. That's all they can do. This is Clinton Machine 101.
Your own standard, and you appear to have benefited from it. Before the release of the emails in August of last year, you had 661,000 Twitter followers. After the Twitter files, your followers doubled, and now it's 3 times what it was last August.
This is another tactic that's used against anyone who ever reveals anything. Well, did you achieve any fame or success or money from yeah. Generally speaking, just about anyone who reveals anything will achieve one of those things if you do it well. Like, and they're not going to come after those who don't achieve those things. So basically, so as if there's some way for Matt Taibbi to have revealed mass government collusion to censor and ban profiles across Twitter and not have gained in the public eye either fame or money or Twitter followers and even if he did it for those reasons, let's say, and I don't think this is who Matt Taibbi is, but let's say he did. Let's say he was just like, you know what? I would never put in this amount of work. I would never work to write these articles or anything, except that I really love money and I really love Twitter followers. And so I can get those 2 things. Let's say that was his goal. Still, the fucking evidence is the evidence. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, that's what I love when people like, it's like I had to deal with this endlessly when I had a show at RT. Now, I haven't been at RT for over a year. So anyone who wants to accuse me of that shit, you can stop. But when I redacted a night at RT, which has now been banned globally, I had to deal with this endlessly. Like, well, your segment on how Cargill or Monsanto or something killed 100,000 people. Don't you work at RT? Didn't Russia create RT America? And it's like, well, okay. And is anything I said incorrect? Can you not look at the sources I reference? Can you not look up your own sources and see that what I'm saying is true about Roundup herbicide or whatever? Can you not okay, so am I lying to you? Well, no, I'm not saying you are. Okay, so everything I've said is true. Everything I've said is accurate, but it has a funny colored name in the corner. It's like, dude, look it up yourself and see whether I'm lying to you. I'm not. I was never censored. I was never told what to say. I was speaking the same truths that I did before I had an RT show. Anyway, she's trying to do that same shit. Like, you're corrupted because your Twitter followers increased. Yeah, her Twitter followers increased during the rigging of the 2016 primary. I guarantee you, due to all the fame she got over being woefully corrupt in that way, I guarantee you that her Twitter followers went up. Does that mean she was biased as a Trump politician? She was doing it for the Twitter followers? No, I think she was doing it to be part of the Clinton machine.
August. I imagine your Substack. You've made some. No. Attention is a powerful drug. Eyeballs, money, own policies by allowing Trump and other MAGA extremists to post incessant lies.
She's saying allowing Trump and other extremists to post lies. So his truth, because I don't mean his personal truth, I mean the truths he revealed, which are, again, she can't deny. She can't argue against. She has no argument against what he revealed in the Twitter files. Instead, she just has to say, you allowed people to lie by giving them the truth. This was also said against WikiLeaks. You allowed people to lie by revealing truth. Well, how dare I reveal truth? What an asshole I am for revealing truth. Man, have I shat in the punch bowl with all this truth. Oh, God, what was I thinking? I can't believe I went out there and I revealed truth that allowed others to lie. Oh, God, what is wrong with me? It's just some of the most pathetic shit.
Endangering public safety and even
endangering public safety. And you have to remember that most of what he revealed being censored on Twitter was accurate stuff. Like a lot of it. So yeah, sure. Some of what Twitter censored was right-wing neo-Nazi extremism, sure. But they have different arguments about that. This is mainly stuff the FBI came to them and said, censor accounts. I would imagine mine was on one of those lists, but so were an endless number of people. Outlets like Truth Out and Consortium News, actual media outlets, Mint Press that I used to work for. All of these were heavily censored. And it might have been because this FBI task force told Twitter to do it.
Hypocrisy is the hangover of an addiction to attention. Now, I want to point out another alleged finding from the Twitter files. Mr. Schellenberger, you've referenced several times this $3.4 million that the FBI paid to Twitter in 2020 that was referenced in General Counsel Jim Baker's email. I first want to confirm that nowhere in the email does Baker say that the money was paid to censor information, take down posts, suspend accounts, or do anything to...
I love that she's like, you referenced this 3.4 million that the FBI paid to Twitter, but it was for good things. It was never done for bad things. It was 3.4 million for good stuff. Seriously. All right, maybe I should wrap up.
Content moderation, is that correct?
It is.
Thank you. But honest reporting would have explained that the 3.4 million was paid to release information, not censor it.
Yeah, you know that. The FBI often pays millions of dollars to outlets like Twitter to release more information. Here, Twitter, here's some money to make sure you're keeping things free and on the up and up. This is some of the dumbest shit. And you notice she needed to put a giant billboard of Joe Rogan behind her, like because in the liberal world, they have created a world where Joe Rogan is this right-wing maniac. And therefore, the fact that they're trying to tie Taibbi to Joe Rogan because they've already done the work of the propaganda against Rogan. So they're like, oh, see, Taibbi is Rogan. Rogan's Taibbi. Exact same thing. Of course, Rogan has had all kinds of guests on his show, including me twice. But he's had left-wing guests like myself. He's had left-wing guests like Abby Martin. He's had plenty of far left-wing guests. He's had right-wing guests. But she knows that that's not what liberals believe because they've only gotten the liberal news media's view of what Rogan is. Anyway, so they then argue about this 3.4 million, which is really just stupid. All right, well, let's see. I want to give you just a tad more of this Chris Hedges interview, and then I'm going to get to some other stories, including DuPont paying for murdering their employees. You got some updates on Latin America and hypocrisy by the U.S. But yeah, going to get to those in a minute. And for those of you at leecamp.net, I'm going to answer some of your questions in a minute as well. So Taibbi was informed there was problems with his 2018 tax return, right? Taibbi then says, why would an IRS agent need to know anything about my professional history? Oh, sorry. I skipped the part where they found out that the IRS had gone through everything about Taibbi. They had his voter registration records, whether he possessed a hunting or fishing license, whether he had a concealed weapons permit, his telephone numbers, articles he had written, articles written about him. This is all for apparently an IRS case that has nothing to do with him revealing the Twitter files, right? Right. Why would an IRS agent, this is a quote from Taibbi, why would an IRS agent need to know anything about my professional history or about controversies that I've been involved with or things that I had written about? That seems pretty dubious. They're not worried about the optics, about doing something like sending an IRS agent to the home of a journalist who has a big platform and a reputation for not being afraid to say something about it. They're not worried about how this looks. It is concerning for a number of reasons. It reminds you of things you would see in a third world country. It really is pretty horrifying how like the lack of fear, the lack of any kind of concern that persecuting a journalist would look bad, could be bad for our government. I mean, these are the type of activities that Nixon resigned over. I mean, Watergate and other associated activities like having a list of enemies that he was breaking in and trying to learn information about them. They notoriously broke into Daniel Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office to try and get personal data on Ellsberg. Well, this sounds very similar. Sending the IRS, weaponizing the IRS to go after a journalist to try and find out, hey, maybe he's got a psychiatrist. Maybe he's got some mental health problems we can exploit. So Chris Hedges continues, there are 3 steps to destroying a reporter who can't be bought off or intimidated. The first is a campaign by the powerful whose lies and crimes have been exposed, along with their obsequious courtiers in the press, to discredit the reporting. The second is a sustained campaign of character assassination. The third is persecution carried out once the reporter's credibility has been weakened. His or her ability to publish or broadcast is degraded and public support has eroded. And that's really interesting, is that this is a multi-step process that they use against journalists who are revealing things they don't like. And one of those steps is to tar and feather their brand, destroy their brand, so that a Seymour Hersh or a Matt Taibbi or a Chris Hedges is no longer looked upon, Glenn Greenwald, no longer looked upon as a legitimate journalist. And of course, Julian Assange, no longer looked upon as a legitimate publisher. And once they've achieved that, once the popular perception of an Assange, for example, is, oh, he's a terrible guy, he's a dickhead, he's a liar, he's a fraud, he's just out for attention, he's all those rape, not all those, there were 2 rape charges that have been completely debunked and dropped. And all of that is designed to make his how people view of him, his brand, just totally degraded. And once they're at that point, then they can go after him in a more substantial way, actually persecuting that person, because they know there won't be enough people backing him up, because they've already made him look like an evildoer, for lack of a better word. They've made him look like a snake. And so therefore, who's going to stand up for a snake? And for those who do stand up for the snake, they are easily refuted, because there'll be a million people on Twitter going, how dare you stand up for a rapist? How dare you stand up for a liar? So this is a multi-step process. And, let's hope they don't keep going after Taibbi. But Hedges continues, this is what happened to Julian Assange. It happened to before Assange, it happened to Don Hollenbeck, I.F. Stone, Gary Webb, who I mentioned a couple of live streams ago, who apparently murdered himself with 2, not 1, but 2 shots to the head, Ray Bonner, and many others. It is what is happening to Taibbi, whose revelations of widespread censorship by the FBI, the CIA, Homeland Security, and other intelligence and government agencies have enraged the ruling class. The concerted attacks on Taibbi are an example of how the walls are steadily closing in to impose an iron conformity, one more piece of our emergent corporate totalitarianism. So great article by Chris Hedges. Feel free to check it out. It's over at Scheer Post. Ironically, Robert Scheer, who I've also worked for Scheer Post. I've posted some things for them. Robert Scheer, epic journalist, epic reporter, something like 30 years at the LA Times. He's been with various outlets, Ramparts Magazine, broke countless stories. He is now, much like Seymour Hersh, he's had to create his own outlet, Scheer Post, because he can't, they won't have him in the mainstream media. He's 80 some years old, but the mainstream media won't have these journalists who are known as epic journalists, Chris Hedges, Seymour Hersh, Robert Scheer, because there is no mainstream media that's actually adversarial to our government any longer. And those who dare be that way, like myself, even though I'm largely a comedian or half a comedian, I don't know what you want to call me, but or Taibbi, our ability to reach people and our ability to publish at outlets, larger outlets, is destroyed. I mean, Taibbi was also at Rolling Stone. He's no longer there because he was their main. Taibbi was like their star. Taibbi was, every time we put out an article, they put it on the cover slap it on the cover of Rolling Stone. Not there anymore. Okay, well, I wanted to bring that incredibly important story to you. Obviously, I hope they back off Taibbi soon. in a moment, this live stream will just go to rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp. So please join me over there. It's free to watch over there. Nothing changes. I do hear that there's some issue with Firefox browser. So I guess, unfortunately, I know it's Google, but you got to use Chrome or one of the others. Sometimes Firefox works, but apparently sometimes it does not. So, but please join me at rumble.com/Lee Camp. I'll actually give you the full link to save you time and effort, so that you can head on over there. I have several stories left for you, including DuPont paying $12 million for killing 4 of their employees. BAE Systems, the weapons contractors, is about to set up a factory in Ukraine. I've just got a lot more stuff for you. So I hope you will join me over there. And I'll see you there in a minute. Unless you're watching on Locals, that'll still keep going as well. Locals is leecamp.net, sends you to my Locals page. So I hope for those of you joining me there, I will answer some of your comments shortly.